Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for coming. Penultimate session of the day. You guys made it over here. So thank you very much for attending. We're going to talk about rolling out Microsoft 365 with Yammer. This is a Yammer-centric session, but it also covers other areas of Office 365, Microsoft 365 that Yammer has relationships with. So we're going to go through that here. Quick introduction about myself. My name is Samir. I'm a product manager now at Yammer. I came from Microsoft, helped launch a feature called MultiGeo recently, and then just started on the Yammer team a couple weeks ago. And I'm going to focus on the API and ecosystem for Yammer. And you know, I love to ride motorcycles and cook and stuff like that. And here's a quick picture of me going whitewater rafting. I used to be a whitewater rafting guide in Colorado, so that used to be my past life.
That's awesome. Yeah, awesome. My name is Dean Swan. I'm an Office Apps and Services MVP. I'm the Director of Product at tyGraph. We create Office 365 reporting and analytics. I've been involved in Yammer for just about 10 years now, and that's me in the corner. There's my Twitter handle. One of the things we want to make sure you have as part of this session is you have our contact information. As part of the MVP program, I love to be able to give back to the community. If you have questions or you want some resources or an opinion, please reach out to us, and I'm happy to provide that. So that's me.
Cool. I don't know if this clicker is really working.
Uh-oh.
It suddenly stopped working.
Okay.
So we're going to go back up here and switch
Okay.
slides. Just a couple takeaways for this session. Really what we want to talk about is how you use Yammer to roll out other technologies within your organization, not just limited to Microsoft 365. We're going to cite a lot of examples around Microsoft 365 today, but really think about any broad technology that you're launching at your organization. What can Yammer do to give you that leg up when it comes to communication, you know, reaching out to people within the organization and really, you know, having a two-way communication street, if you will. The second thing we're going to look at is, you know, nurturing these communities. Like, how do you create communities? How do you bring people to those communities? How do you nurture them? How do you make them run on their own? We're going to talk about that. And then finally, like, you already own Yammer. It's a part of your Microsoft 365 subscription. So we want you to understand your investment and use it effectively. A couple questions over here. In the audience, who is a community manager? Okay. IT administrator.
IT, okay.
Very cool.
All right, good.
And then who's rolled out Yammer already within your organization?
Okay, good.
All of you have. And who doesn't know what Yammer is?
Anybody?
Okay, good.
All right, okay, one.
All right. So before we get started, I wanted to play a quick video on 10 years of Yammer. So sit back, enjoy this 1 minute long video. Brilliant. So Yammer's been around for almost 10 years now, a little over 10 years actually, and it's one of the earliest enterprise social networks in the world. And you know, we were acquired by Microsoft and obviously made a number of inroads into Microsoft 365 applications by providing you know, Yammer's intelligence as a social layer across all of Microsoft 365. And that's the goal, and that's what we're going to keep marching towards. Here's a quick look at Yammer's mission. It's sort of like tees off of Microsoft's vision, right? The idea is to empower every person and every individual in the world to achieve more. And with Yammer, we sort of break down Yammer's mission into 3 different buckets. The first one is leadership engagement. The idea that you can have leaders within the organization connect with employees, build culture, build a two-way street, build transparency, you know, within the organization is one of the areas where Yammer really shines, right? So quick example at Microsoft, we have a Yammer group called CEO Connection, where Satya posts regularly. People can ask him questions over there. It really drives a lot of traffic to that particular group because you have such a massive personality like Satya on that group, expressing his opinions, and obviously everybody in the organization wants to listen to it. So Yammer really provides a platform for that. You can, connect that with Stream, connect that with, SharePoint, and really pull together a video and, a sort of a narrative together on one single page. So that's one area where Yammer really shines. The other one's around corporate communications. Yammer really gives you the ability to modernize your comms, your corporate comms. Move away again from a single, way of communicating where you're just sending folks an email to a Yammer model where it's more of a two-way street. Like ask a question in HR, HR introduces a new policy, somebody has questions, they can ask them directly over there. There's, healthy debate. So that's another area where corporate communications can really come to life and become modern with Yammer. And the third one, for me, this is particularly huge, creating communities and knowledge, right? When you create communities within Yammer, you're really bringing people together. You're giving people a voice, and giving people actually a destination that they do not have anywhere else, to ask a question, to connect with other folks within the organization. Like, for example, I have a couple of examples that I'm going to talk through as we go through some of the slides over here. But really, what you can do is form this knowledge base and have sort of an interactive discussion with your contingents. So these are three areas where Yammer's mission is focused on today. In terms of Yammer's superpowers, there's a number of superpowers that Yammer really shines up with. The first one being like the fact that it's very, very easy and simple to use. There is no learning curve as such to using Yammer. If you can type on a keyboard, if you're used to like MIRC, Mail Internet Relay Chat from back in the day, you've sort of understood the idea of how to operate within Yammer. It's open and inclusive. Anybody from the organization can really connect. The whole idea of creating these public groups where people can interact openly, unfettered access and so forth. And then finally, it's also backed by Microsoft 365. So when it comes to security compliance, those areas, there's heavy investment from Microsoft in Yammer on those areas. So Yammer will continue to grow there.
Yeah, and I would just add too that, Sam and I are really talking about using Yammer in rolling out Microsoft 365 as well as other technologies. But what we're saying is this is an approach. There are obviously other ways to roll out in 365, but the reason we really are biased towards Yammer is because of that open communication channel that Yammer provides. It's really about that conversation that you can start in your organization, very familiar UX, and people can jump in and get going pretty quickly.
Right on.
Okay, yeah, in terms of an approach, we're also assuming that you guys, if you're rolling out Microsoft 365, that you already have a plan, that you've invested in a project approach. And if you haven't started your journey, this is one to consider. The Microsoft Teams team put together a service adoption framework where you can become a service adoption specialist by taking this course. It's on edX. That link, and you'll have an opportunity to get the slides later, but the link will take you to the course that describes it. But the idea here is there's got to be a problem that you're solving with rolling out Microsoft 365, and you want your plan to reflect that. This is a pretty straightforward approach where you have a startup, a phase 2 where you're experimenting. It's really important to get your customers, your internal customers, using the software very quickly. And then finally, scaling. And there's two words that I want to make sure that we define here, and you hear them quite a bit, and they're adoption and usage. And the way I think of those two terms, adoption is really about, and this is part of the service adoption framework, it's really about, it's organization focused. So it's about the organization delivering technical and business capabilities, where usage is more directed at the individual, and that individual taking those business and technical capabilities and producing business value. So that's what we're looking to roll out Microsoft 365. We're really assuming that you guys already have an approach. And if you don't, this is a good one to take a look at and adopt for your particular plan. And the reason, we had those takeaway slides. If I could add a fourth, nothing changes unless people change. And fundamentally, rolling out a new service, there's two key components. There's the technology enablement, and then there's the getting the people to change. And that is a critical aspect of your project. And it's really more than just a set of products. It's fundamentally getting people to do something different than they were doing the day before. And I want to make sure we emphasize that point, because it's something that can get overlooked, but it's critical to the success of your project. All right.
So, tactically, when you talk about managing a rollout for Microsoft 365 or Office 365, customers can look at Yammer as a method to do that deployment. And here are some steps that we've sort of put together on the steps that you would take to manage your Office 365 rollout. And we'll go into each one of these in a little bit more detail in the next few slides. But really, what you want to do is create your communities, ensure that you're communicating change, making sure that information is democratized. It's not held in just one body or one individual or one group. You're sharing your information out to local teams so that they can really, sort of create that exponential effect. And then once it's done, don't just throw it away and walk away, because you've created this amazing IP. There's more ways to use it than you've thought about. So, we're going to walk through each of these steps over here in a little bit more detail. When it comes to creating groups for Microsoft 365, these are three groups that we generally find customers create. And, you may end up creating more groups, but really what it really boils down to is that, hey, I want to have an Office 365 pilot group when I start deploying Office 365 in my organization. And that pilot group will have my core IT staff, maybe a few early adopters in there as well. And in that pilot group, we're going to go ahead and discuss things that we've encountered in terms of rolling out this, what's working, what's not working, and really give it the first round test, if you will. Once you're done with that, then you create another group called this New to Office 365 group. And in that group, you invite your second wave of individuals that are becoming a part of your, that are moving onto Office 365, say from on-premises or from any other cloud service provider. And then over here, you can post some tricks and tips and, just ways for folks to feel like, hey, yeah, there's somebody I can reach out to in case I have questions about X, Y, and Z while I'm using Microsoft 365. Because Microsoft 365 is also a very, very wide application, right? So there's so many services in Microsoft 365, so you really want to make sure that your users are abreast of what's going on. And the third one is ways for folks to provide feedback. Once you have a group for feedback, like, hey, this is working, this is not working, that's a great place to really drive people into. Maybe somebody's got a feature request, maybe something's supposed to work in a different way. Again, open, unfettered access to individuals really creates communities. And a quick example over here for me was my experience with MultiGeo. So I used to be the product marketing manager for MultiGeo at Microsoft. We launched the service in 2017. And it was a very difficult service to launch because had massive architectural implications for our email, for SharePoint, for Exchange, for OneDrive, and so forth. The field, Microsoft Field, we have about 125,000 employees worldwide, and they're spread all across the world. So really, there's no connection back to Redmond for a lot of these employees. So Yammer really served as a one-stop shop for sharing information with these people out there, right? I was able to create this Yammer group. There were a lot of detractors within Microsoft as well. Social is not for everybody. Again, it's a change in culture, and you've got to recognize that there's a change in culture. So there were a lot of detractors. Some people are like, why are you putting it over there? Much rather send people an email. What I wanted to create was, again, a two-way communication street. I wanted to find out from the field, people talking to customers like, hey, what's working and what's not working? And really, sort of validate my assumptions and my hypothesis. And that's what the field did with this Yammer group. I created key links on the right side over here. and it'll give you everything you need, kit and caboodle of everything you need to do with MultiGeo. You want to go present a deck with customers? Here it is. You want to go understand some FAQs? Here it is. You want to understand the mumbo jumbo behind the pricing that we went through? Go ahead, and here it is, right? So again, being very, very crystal and open with my community. And you know, the results really showed. We started off with like 4 people in this community. Me, my engineer, another developer, and another program manager was in it. And then within like 6 or 7 months, we were able to grow it to almost 1,200 people. And this is a relevant community. And the reason why it was relevant for me is like I had almost 1,000 eyes out there looking at stuff that I may have missed. So 1,000 people really telling me that, hey, Samir, I know that you added a new feature to MultiGeo, but guess what? There's this blog out there. It's not updated. You need to go do that. I would have completely missed that because how many 2 hands? I can't juggle too many things, right? So creating communities like this really helped me out. And what happened was over time, Yammers opened, right? So anybody can get in there and post a message and stuff like that. People love to be recognized. And over time, what happened is, the people I was responding to suddenly started responding to other people. And they started becoming champions. They started owning the group themselves. They were posting stuff as opposed to me posting in there and having them interact. So that's another quick example over here of like creating communities of knowledge and helping folks really sort of express themselves openly on questions that really matter to them. And in terms of success, like I said, we started off with 4 people, and this grew to over 1,000 people. You can see the member and non-member split over there. Again, using Yammer Analytics over here just to show you some of the stats. Almost 2,000 non-members came to this group because, again, the whole idea is the value of information. If the information is valuable, people will come and get it. If the information is valuable, people will come and interact with it. They'll have feedback, they'll have questions, because this is very relevant stuff. I'm no longer on the MultiGeo team right now, but guess what? This group is still running. Somebody else is going to take over the reins, but it's running on its own right now. So what we've really done is taken a topic, created a community, created champions, and then let loose, have them run on its own.
Yeah, and that third bullet there, strategy drives measures. I've done a lot of work in reporting and analytics for Office 365, and the idea here is that you really need a solid strategy before you decide what measures you're going to put into place. I was at a large agribusiness, and we had 3 or 4 very defining a vision for what we wanted out of Yammer. So we based our measures on that strategy. So the idea here is, if you want to measure success, have a strategy and have your reporting and analytics be based on that strategy.
The second pillar over here in our steps was about communicating change. Change is difficult. Any sort of change is difficult. Change your toothbrush, life changes, right? And you're talking about changing technology over here completely, right? You're talking about, I used to do XYZ process, and this is what I did at work, and now you're going to have me change that completely. So change is difficult for people, and we've got to recognize that and be empathetic towards that.
That's
right? It's very easy to say, be brash about it, but really when you're in that corner and you've gone through that change, you understand that change is quite impactful. What we want to do with change, and the way to use Yammer is to be communicating regularly. You want to let people know what's changed, what is coming, and just keep people in the loop. People at the end of the day want to be in the loop, and Yammer is your vehicle to bring them into that loop. Okay? Mm-hmm. So you've got the idea of using Yammer to collect questions. So say, for instance, you've got an event going on and you want to collect feedback on or questions before that event. Use Yammer. Like, create a group and make it open for people to come and ask those questions. Quick example at Microsoft. Again, Satya hosts a monthly Q&A, and we use Yammer to collect questions from 125,000 odd people around the world. And they all post their questions into Yammer. Some questions turn into really long threads where people have ideas and they respond to each other and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, a community manager pours through all these questions, picks a few questions for Satya. But again, the very fact that we're having this open conversation within the organization on Yammer is half the battle won, right?
Yeah, let's just take a minute here. This particular example is about communicating a particular change to the plan. And one of the things as we're leading these types of transformations is we forget, we hold all the cards. We know what's going to happen. And it's critical for us to empathize with the people that are going through the change, that they have the opportunity to come process that with you, bring them along the journey with you as the organization is driving out this change. And this is an example of there was a delay, and was posted on Yammer, and give people first let them know that the change was happening, and two, give them the opportunity to process it and interact with that change so that they can come on board and along that journey with you.
Absolutely. So we have a quick little matrix over here in terms of getting tactical with change. Again, the whole idea is to communicate as regularly as possible so that people are in the loop. Just keep people in the loop at the end of the day. With Microsoft 365 launches, say for instance, you're moving from an on-premises email solution to Microsoft 365's Exchange. A month prior to launch, send out materials to people. Be like, hey, this is Exchange Online. You're going to use Outlook web access, or you're going to use the Outlook client or the Outlook web app. So let people understand the magnitude of the change. Let them absorb the magnitude of the change. And then, the cadence keeps going on. It's not one and done. So over time, you're going to communicate to your audiences over and over. 2 weeks prior to launch, maybe send another notification, day before launch, and let people know that, hey, guess what? Your mailboxes are moving from on-premises to the cloud. You won't have access to your mailbox for X amount of time. If you have any questions, go contact XYZ person in this particular group or post a message over here. And the day of launch, again, communicate the same thing again. The idea is to keep people in the loop, keep people in the know so that they're not surprised. One of the key factors that we found was like, hey, why don't you go create a new user support group? Go tell all your members within the organization that are moving from on-premises to the cloud that, hey, yeah, there's this new user support group, and you can go and ask any questions over there about how do I use Excel? How do I use PowerPoint? How do I use Word? What is OneDrive in the cloud? How is OneDrive compared to my personal OneDrive? There's a million questions out there. And when people move technologies, these are the kind of things that frustrate them. So, use communication as a way to unfrustrate people and communicate your change effectively.
Yep.
And again, back to my MultiGeo example, and that's pretty much what we did with MultiGeo. So like I was saying, right before launch, we were going through some, quote unquote drama on the engineering side, on the marketing side, just internal sausage making was getting too heavy. And the field was completely unaware. Our sales field was completely unaware of what's going on. So what we did was, we said, okay, we've sort of gotten our ducks in a row together over here. We're going to put together a quick 5-10 minute video that cuts through the chase, write up a quick little note of what exactly is happening, and post it as an announcement to the entire community. And there were about 1,000 people over here, posted it into the entire community, was seen by 945 people. A number of people liked it also. There were rolling comments on this as well. It's like, hey, let's just be nimble and fast in terms of communicating. You don't have to stand up for ceremonies. This doesn't have to be a broad production thing. Yammer really gives you the ability of sending out tidbits, quick bits of information to people. And that's how we consume information today.
Yeah.
We consume information in bite sizes. We consume so much information. I wasn't a huge reader growing up, but now I read so much, but I read in small bits and sizes, and that's become sort of the name of the game for a lot of millennials out there. So using Yammer as a way to communicate change for MultiGeo really saved my day over there. So.
Now, Sam, the other point about this video is Microsoft's a global organization, and likely some of your companies are global as well. And so the idea is that you created this video pretty cheaply, and then Yammer is really good at making it doesn't care about time, right? It's more of a you get to Yammer on your time, and that video allowed you to speak to the field all over the globe in a way that made sense.
Right, absolutely, yeah. And the video is probably still relevant today as well, because it contains our value prop. Like I started the video with my value prop, with what this is for, how we're going to go sell it, who's going to go buy it. So it still is very relevant IP. But exactly what you said, Dean. Like it's enshrined there. People can go see it. new users coming into that group can also go check out the history, and they'll probably find this video as well.
Yeah.
And that really comes down to like Yammer Jams. How many of us have hosted Yammer Jams over here before? Do you know what a Yammer Jam is?
Yeah.
Okay. So a Yammer Jam is basically an interactive Q&A session with folks. Say for example, you've got a product group and you've got a number of people, salespeople out there. You can host a Yammer Jam on a particular topic with a few experts and really have a two-way interaction and cut through the chase again. I really like Yammer Jams because it's got a bias for action. You get to do stuff right away. Again, no stand-up for ceremonies. You're simply engaging your community on a particular topic. You're ensuring that folks know that hey, I've got a personality out here or an expert to come and answer your questions, and people will come. People come and ask their own questions. And again, it's not like a massive meeting that they need to go sit in a meeting room and 1,500 people around them and going through something. This could just be another tab in their browser, right? I open up my Edge browser, just another tab. I've got a Yammer Jam running. I'm doing my day job as well. Oh, on the side, I'm going to engage in this community as well. So again, bias for action with Yammer Jams is awesome, and it's like super easy to set up and manage. I'm certainly a huge fan of it.
Yeah, the other key for those that have not had Yammer Jams, they're kind of like very time-focused events, and they were, a lot of people call them Ask Me Anythings now, or AMAs. Mm-hmm. That's kind of the corollary to today. We've got some more information on Yammer Jams here.
So in terms of getting tactical with successful Yammer Jams, we've got about a few steps over here that really, cut through the chase, if you will. The first one is identifying the business opportunity. What do you want to do this Yammer Jam for? Is it even a worthy opportunity? Who is the primary audience and what is in it for them? Why would people come and join this Yammer Jam when they could be doing 10,000 other things? So really need to have a what's in it for them. Hey, salespeople, this is going to help you understand how we sell our technology, how we deploy our technology. And for the salesperson, his mind is like, hey, I need to be more relevant in front of my customers, so I'm going to go join this Yammer Jam. So you really want to capture that WIIFM channel over there. Who's coming to the event on our side, right? Who's hosting the Yammer Jam? Is it an expert? Is it somebody very important? Will it drive people to come over there? You want to have somebody of relevance over there so that, again, you're bringing people into a solid discussion.
Yeah, pulling it back to the Microsoft 365 rollout, this is also a great opportunity to get your executive leaders involved. Typically, they're very effective when you have somebody from the C-suite that is apparent and transparent for the Yammer Jam. So for example, if you're changing over to Microsoft 365 because you have a very large first-line worker contingent and there's part of that suite that you want them to use, then this would be a great opportunity for a key leader, for her or for him to jump on a Yammer Jam and really lay out the business value for why we're moving to Microsoft 365. And that's a great opportunity because when you have an executive visible, your chances of success are much higher.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. So speaking on that, how are you going to communicate your Yammer Jam? How are people going to find out? Again, you've got to do a little bit of internal marketing on this as well, because you want to get the maximum buck for your time as well, right? Bang for your time.
Yeah.
Buck for your time.
Yeah.
But make sure that you've told people about Yammer Jams. You can do some very, very simple stuff. Hallway posters. Just print something out and be like, hey, Yammer Jam between 10:30 and 11:30, talking to XYZ person on this topic. Or send out a Yammer announcement so that your entire community is aware that, yeah, there's going to be a Yammer Jam at this particular time. But again, that whole idea of how you're communicating the event is really going to drive participation. And for Yammer Jams, you want to drive participation. Because at the end of the day, if there are not enough people, it's not going to be as interactive. And,
right.
and Yammer Jams are not just for that particular moment. Like when I did a Yammer Jam for MultiGeo, Dean, I ran through these steps over here pretty much. And then through the Yammer Jam, I was able to build my FAQ. So I had enough questions and enough answers posted over there that it became a fully published document. So again, using Yammer as a way to help you do your work faster, that really helped me out. I mean, there were questions I wouldn't even think about. that came through the Yammer Jam.
Yeah, and again, I'd like to say this again. It's really about helping people understand why they're changing and help work through that change process and the curve that's associated with it. And so this gives them that opportunity, in a very safe environment to ask those questions and see what the executives have to say.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah.
And people want to ask questions. It's just that they have no avenue to ask those questions.
Right.
It's not like I'm going to go email some major executive, be like, hey, by the way, this is my question. No, a Yammer Jam or an event is a much more a conducive place to ask those questions out aloud.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then there's ways to define and measure success, obviously, analytics all the way through. And then you want to provide some next steps as well. What next after this Yammer Jam? For me, it was like, hey, thank you very much, everybody. Thanks for coming to this Yammer Jam. You're going to have an FAQ document at the end of it, and I'll share this out. Provide me feedback on the FAQ document again. So again, involving my contingents over and over again, because they want to participate as much as I want them to participate.
Yeah, we've got a link in the resources page for a Yammer Jam playbook that's really, really good. Yeah, I think we've got another, okay.
The next thing is involving and equipping local teams. Again, with a rollout, you want to ensure that, especially if your organization is massive and decentralized, you want to ensure that your local teams have enough information on what they need to do to roll out within their particular area. So say, for instance, you're a large company, you're launching Office 365, and you've got users out in Japan, you want to make sure that, hey, that my Japanese counterpart is aware of all the IP that we've produced in this. Has the IP been localized to Japanese? Do we have a way to communicate with those folks over there? So again, equipping folks across the board can really help out in terms of getting your message through and sort of speeding up your project. Ability of discussing best practices, providing them training options and so forth. Here's something we created with Microsoft's 365 applications. There's so many applications over here, so we created a periodic table for Office 365 and said, okay, we're going to go through each level of this periodic table and then talk through each one of these applications and what it does, and again, make it very relevant for the audience as such.
Yeah, and just to point out, give credit, this is Matt Wade who created that.
Right on. And then our fourth pillar was post-project engagement. So now you're done with the project. Imagine it's a migration project and it's completed. But the conversation around this should continue, right? It's not I'm done with it, then I'm leaving. Going back to our MultiGeo example earlier, I've started it, I've created a community, I have to keep on nurturing the community. You shouldn't just leave your community after your project is done. Maybe some projects do get archived, some groups do get archived, and there's ways to symbolize that and say that, yeah, this group is archived, no new questions over here, but it contains a lot of IP from, from months and months of work, if you will. Again, the idea is to keep nurturing them, nurturing your champions, because perhaps you're going to move to a different project and they can take the baton and run on from there. Mm-hmm. And Yammer provides that great spot over here. So in terms of post-project engagement, I would post them updates, any new changes, maybe their new customer case studies. Just, again, ways for you to excite people in your community and bring them back. Again, the value of information over here is key. You've done all this work, don't throw it away. There's ways to nurture it and reap benefits on it.
Yeah, really keep the momentum going. And the way I like to think of it is make Yammer a member of your project team. It sounds a little silly, but if you are able to do that, tell Yammer everything, because there is the group of people that you're transforming with, but then you're going to add on more team members later. So you're going to want to have a good spot for them to come and understand what has happened before them and get really on speed with all the changes.
Absolutely.
So I have a couple of case studies here. Again, back to that large agribusiness here in North America. This was a company that had lots and lots of on-premises SharePoint servers. And they moved from that environment to the cloud. And they had created a SharePoint admins group as part of that process to get all the SharePoint admins trained up on what that was going to look like in the future. Well, interestingly enough, once the transition was over, and that group just continued to grow and really a lot of healthy discussions, and they did a quick study to find out that because they had a group in Yammer, they were able to decrease help desk tickets as it relates to SharePoint. So that was a huge win for them. Another example is an insurance company based in the eastern US that had created an Office 365 Yammer group. And the original purpose of this group was to get questions answered quickly for rollout. And during the project, they had some learnings too that they wanted to share. And one of those is that because Office 365 or Microsoft 365, there's a lot of different products in there, not everybody can answer all the questions that come in. So because the insurance company had different people in charge of the different products, they wanted to make sure that everybody was aware who was responsible for what, and so they hashtagged each of the products. So if there was a hashtag SharePoint, the SharePoint person would answer, and that was something that they really felt made that experience very worthwhile. Fast forward to the end of their rollout, now that SharePoint Tips and Tricks group is very active, and they have another one on Excel, of all things. And that Excel group is very popular. And you imagine an insurance company probably has a lot of spreadsheets. And that came as an unintended result of having that Yammer group for their original rollout.
That's fantastic. Okay. Yep. We want to play you a quick little video over here of on tips for using Yammer to roll out Office 365, and this is from this is with our product evangelist Steve Wynn.
Yeah.
The most exciting thing for us is we introduced other Office 365 tools at the same time. We went out and did some training, and what we found is people are training each other. So people will post things on Yammer, and someone else will have the answer now, and we don't have to jump in and get them the answer. The community is giving the answers out there, so it's kind of neat, that crowdsourcing that's happening.
We actually started Yammer before we had the Office 365 rollout, and we used Yammer to leverage a lot of the training and the communication of what was happening during each rollout. We rolled out Office 365 in waves, and with each wave, we added them to the group. And then they got all the communications of all the new things that were coming out, our training sessions, and if they had any support issues that our local champions in Office 365 were able to address and answer.
And again, these resources are listed at the last slide we'll show you before we go.
Oops. I guess you don't want to watch that again.
There we go. Okay, so we've talked a lot about the direct use of Yammer for the making sure everybody's aware of the change. But I wanted to make you aware that there's a resource called Productivity Library. And we've got a link there to this place on the web that has 240 examples of how to make use of the Office 365 tool set to get business done, like keep devices always up to date or pinpoint market trends. And it's really a great resource to get these little bite-sized trainings, these snackables they call them, get them in front of your users so that they can get some learning, get some training ahead of time. So one idea is to, in your Office 365 training group, find a bunch of these that are relevant to your business and post links to them. And if you could go to the next slide. So here's an example where I just have a productivity tip of the week. Here, click below to learn how to create high-quality financial presentations. And the beauty of the productivity library is you can filter it by industry, by product, so that you can quickly find those ones that are relevant for you. Sam touched on this a little earlier, but let's say that you're in your physical location, you're having a lunch and learn. Well, use Yammer to ask people, what do you want to know? When we get together and have pizza and learn about Microsoft 365, what is it that you want to know that would help you use the tool better? Use that to get those questions and then answer them when you're physically face-to-face. Here's another idea, providing FAQs. As Sam had talked about, one of the products out of his Yammer Jam was he created an FAQ. But I wanted to point out two things here. One, I've posted an FAQ on OneNote, but I've also pinned it to this right-hand column here, the OneNote FAQ, as Sam did in his MultiGeo example. You have a lot of resources off to the side there and available to folks.
And people love that, honestly, like just the ability of them to go. So what I did from a MultiGeo group also, I created a short link. So aka.ms/MultiGeo will take you to the Yammer community. So that just got embedded in people's head. It's like, oh, I have a question in MultiGeo. Oh, just go to Yammer.
That's the
just go to that community.
Right?
Yeah. And then, once it started sticking, they started telling other people about it, and that whole list of resources on the side. I keep tabs on how many times things have been clicked and stuff like that. It's considerable. So reduces a lot of stress on people.
And here's an idea that is brand new. My CTO and I presented on this at Ignite last year. But this is the idea that you can use a number of Microsoft technologies to create a knowledge base. So the idea here is that you go to a special group in Yammer and you ask a question. And the knowledge bot, if it knows the answer, answers it right away. If the knowledge bot does not know the answer, it routes it to an expert who answers the question. Now here's the real value. That question automatically gets placed into the FAQ for the knowledge bot to use again that question is asked. There's a full recipe, a blog that John and I wrote for the Microsoft Tech community. There's a link there, and we're very proud that this is an option available to you guys to build a knowledge base. Very cool.
And this is really stitching a number of different Microsoft 365 technologies together, right?
Right. So you'll notice there I've highlighted from Microsoft Power Apps and Flow. Now it's John's identity, but he didn't answer that. The knowledge bot did on his behalf. So we're making use of Flow, SharePoint, the Q&A maker from Azure. And so it's a really great way to get that knowledge management working in your company and really get that digital tribal knowledge passed on from person to person.
Right. And here, we've also introduced a new web part for SharePoint. It's the new Yammer web part for SharePoint. How many folks know that there's a new web part for SharePoint? Okay, a couple people.
All right.
Yeah. So we made some improvements to the web part. We've been through a number of iterations of this web part in the past. This one is actually really slick. It's super easy to set up. Obviously, it's a SharePoint web part, just like any other SharePoint web part. But the way it's sort of laid into the page renders really well. The social actions are captured in the web part itself, as opposed to taking you to Yammer. I don't know if you guys remember the previous web part. If you clicked on like a message, it would take you to yammer.com in the browser, and then you do your social interaction there on that Open Graph object. Instead, you're going to do your social interactions here. So some improvements made of there. Would love to hear your feedback on how things are working with this web part for you.
Yeah, and the idea here is that Yammer, the investments made in Yammer, it's obvious that part of that is to be the social layer for Office 365. And so you want to be able to go from Yammer to SharePoint and have those conversations in context. And that's really what this newly designed web part is going to allow you to do, is to have those conversations, those important discussions, right with the rest of the resources that are available on that SharePoint page.
Absolutely. Yeah. We're really proud of this web part. We have it in our internal pages now. Again, the idea of exactly what Dean said. Yammer is not a destination. It's it should be interspersed across your entire Microsoft 365 experience. Whether I'm in email or SharePoint or OneDrive or Teams or even Yammer, I should be able to get that social experience just not by visiting Yammer.com. And that's what we're intending on doing across Microsoft 365.
Yep.
So that's our penultimate slide. And we've got a slide on a number of resources available over here, both from planning and driving adoption to the Office roadmap to providing us feedback. Some of the resources we discussed today around Yammer Jams, and rolling out Office 365 with Yammer are listed right up there.
Yeah. So as we close, we would love to take any questions or comments, any feedback, any experiences that you guys would like to share on your journey in rolling out Microsoft 365. Thoughts, questions? Anyone?
No.
All right, well, thank you all for
Thank you very
coming.
much
We
for
really
coming.
appreciate your time, and have a great Microsoft 365 journey.